Assalamualaikum and hi, I am Nur Hikmah Binti Sudin and my metric number is S59X69. So today I'm going to show you on how to draw three types of diagrams using Microsoft Visual. So this is the case given, which is Ashton Fleming case. First, I'm gonna start with preparing a context diagram to document accounts payable processing at SNS. So first, I will use the circle shape which represent the transformation processes. So basically, context diagram is the highest level DFD because it provides the summary level view of a system to reader. To indicate this, we will use the square boxes, which is called the data sources and destinations. These represent the data received or sent by people and organizations. The account payable process retrieves the purchase order from purchasing department, and then I will touch both of these shapes using a curved wave arrow, which is called the data flow, to convey the flow of the data into or out of a process. So here it is purchase order. Next is account payable, receives the receiving report from the receiving department. For this, also use the same shape as previous one. Receiving report, and then the vendor department sends the invoice to accounts payable and receives the payment and remittance advice. Lastly, the accounts payable report will then be received by the management. Use the connector and then attach this to the square box. And then here is the accounts payable report. And now for the next questions, students are required to prepare a level O data flow diagram of SNS accounts payable. First, I'm gonna take the transformation process symbol. Then it will be labeled as 1.0 record payable. Here is vendor. And I'm going to take the connectors right here. So yeah, the vendor sent the invoice to accounts payable for the purpose of recording payable. And then here for the files or data stores, they will be represented by two horizontal line symbols called data stores. So here there are two documents received, which is accounts payable, and another one is vendor invoices. Okay, so attach this one to the accounts payable, and another one is for the vendor invoices. Okay. Take the circle shape again and write 2.0, collect, and store purchasing orders and receiving report. And then we will move on to purchasing department. And another one is receiving department by drawing the square boxes. Put it a little bit. So this indicates that accounts payable receives purchase order and receiving report from purchasing department and receiving department. So here accounts payable collect and store purchase orders and receiving reports in purchase order file and receiving report file. And then go to the basic shapes and take the circle one. Next step is 3.0, making payment. The accounts payable file uses the double-sided arrow because it is sent back after making payment. After payments are made and Ashton reviews the documents, the checks are then recorded in cash disbursement journal. So for this one, Susan then returns the check to the vendor and sends a copy of the check to Clark, who files the document in paid invoice file. And then a 4.0 is for prepare the management report. So here the management report is prepared based on accounts payable ledger and then sent to the management. So yeah. So now let's move on to the final question, which it requires to prepare a document flowchart to document the accounts payable. So let's create the template first using the cross-functional flowchart option. Then adjust the table. Before starting, I will write the title S&S account payable. And also the three major players, which we will start with the account payable, controller, owner or manager. So because the process begins from the purchasing, receiving and vendor, I will use the terminal symbol to indicate beginning in a process. They are placed in the upper of the account payable column. So each of them comes out with the document. For the purchasing, it is purchase order. From receiving is receiving report. And then for the vendor, it is invoices. It is vendor invoices. For this, I will use the document symbols to illustrate that this document is filed alphabetically. Use the paper document file symbol. And it is labeled with the letter A. Then the clerk attaches purchase order, receiving report, and invoices. This is represented by manual operation symbol. For the vendor invoice received, the accounts payable clerk records account payable. And files the invoices in vendor invoice. Also use the upside down triangle and label with A. The clerk then forwards the matched documents to Ashton. So here to connect the process flow to the other column, use the on-page connector, and here it is labeled with the letter A. Next is Ashton, which is the controller. So here Ashton receives the documents and prepare the vendor checks. And forward the documents to Susan together with 2 checks prepared. Here, use another on-page connector, but this time label it with B. Ashton also records the check in the cash disbursement journal. And then Susan receives the documents and sign and review the check. The checkpoint is sent to the vendor. Then Susan returns the document and check to copy the account payable clerk. Here it is labeled with C inside. The clerk then receives the documents and check too. Then an alphabetical file is produced. At the end of every month, account payable clerk uses the accounts payable ledger, using ledger symbol to prepare account payable report. And then the document is forwarded to Susan, here labeled with letter D. Lastly, Susan reviews account payable report